The people at the front who are paying attention and keeping it all going.
Love you guys.
Hi.
Big fans.
Thank you to the people at the back who are quietly checking their emails. I appreciate the respect.
It occurs to me this is actually the perfect time slot for the comedy piece of this. Like 6:37 at a podcast event is basically the 2 a.m. equivalent at any late
That's
night
great.
show.
The bad news is that the comedian didn't turn
We're
up.
closing it down, guys.
Yeah.
The only difference is you guys should probably be 2 or 3 more beers in, but that's okay. We'll forgive it. We'll forgive it.
This is a bawdy crowd already. I love it. Okay, this is the last 15 minutes you need to get through.
Can you handle hecklers? Are you?
No, I can't.
You have to rein us in, Colin. It's your
I'm
job
British.
to rein us in. We're trusting you here.
So just to kind of reintroduce who we have here, Bikram is Managing Director of Maximum Fun, the podcast network.
Hello.
My brother and me, one of the biggest comedy podcasts, has long been part of Maximum Fun. And
Yep.
Kristen works with me at Earwolf and Stitcher. She's Director of Business Development.
I'm basically the wedding crasher of this panel. I don't have the fancy red speaker at the bottom of my thing, but here I am speaking, so thank you.
So let's start with what brought both of you to comedy podcasting.
Wow.
Defer to you.
I didn't know you were going to start.
Surprise.
I came through it by just taking a role at Maximum Fun. I hadn't had a media experience before that, but I met Jesse, who's the founder and owner of Maximum Fun, through a mutual acquaintance at a time when he was looking for somebody to take over running the business. And so Max Fun is a network that is focused on comedy and culture as its 2 pillars, but it's also a very values-driven community. It's a network that celebrates creativity, and I think like comedy is a dimension in which we excel because it's in our DNA. But I really come at it from the values of the company, and that's what drew me in from the start. Being a place that embraces openness and inclusiveness and learning and sponsoring creativity. So
It's such a kind, goofy community. I love it. Maximum is a special place for sure. My origin story with comedy is kind of weird. A lot of people start their podcasting careers interning or producing. Oftentimes it starts at NPR. I also started at NPR, but in a really bizarre way. I needed to get my foot in the door. I wanted to work in audio, and I took the only job I could at WGBH, which is a massive PBS and NPR station out of Boston. If anybody's ever seen WGBH, at the end, Downton, everybody knows. So I canvassed. I literally knocked on doors for almost a year of my life in Boston. ULA people don't understand what that means. Through the winter in Boston, knocking on doors. I had to take off 12 layers of jackets just to be able to talk to somebody once I got there. And I was really good at it. Something about me is incredibly, incredibly disarming. And I was good enough at that gig that they said, do you want to do what you're doing on air? Do you want to actually be a part of our pledge drives and be one of those annoying people that bothers you during when you're listening to NPR? And I said, yes, that sounds great. So that was me, and I did that for a minute, and they said, great, do you want to do one of our very first podcasts? It's going to be basically a Talking Dead version of Downton Abbey, and it's the very first time we've ever done a podcast. I barely knew what a podcast was, but I said, yes, I'm in. And from that point forward, I knew this is what I wanted to do. But you asked why I got involved in comedy, and the truth is I came up in what I now consider the Catholic Church of podcasting, which is the PBS-y, NPR-y iteration of this world. And it wasn't until I moved to LA that I realized that there was this really incredible, seedy underbelly of podcasting called the comedy space.
Totally.
And no regrets. I've loved it ever since. So Colin and I get to work together every day, all day long, building out comedy programming for Stitcher.
So both of you, I guess, are involved in having people pitch new shows. What makes a comedy podcast stand out to you in a pitch in 2019?
It is very hard to stand out. I mean, it's obviously an increasingly competitive space. I think the things that really, in general, in podcasts make sense is can you tell what the show is in a sentence or less? Can you Can you define it in a very clear way? And for me, in particular, because of the way that our shows are the business behind our shows, can you sort of speak uniquely to a listener? Like, is this just going to be the best version of X, or is this going to be something that's Y that completely doesn't exist anywhere else? And we tend to support the things that are Y. We think, like, literally, why are you doing this? But because I think that is, one of the benefits of being a podcast is that you can take risks. Generally your upfront investment is lower, and we really emphasize the ability to take creative risks, and that resulting in things that you just can't get anywhere else.
Do you want to give us an example of that kind of show?
Yeah, sure. One of my favorite shows on the network is called the Beef and Dairy Network, which is confusing, but it is a show about the Beef and Dairy Network sort of, I guess it's a journalistic coverage of beef and dairy.
Beef meaning meat.
Beef meaning
dairy
meat,
meaning milk.
Meaning milk. Yeah.
Meat and
so
milk show.
The industry, it's a UK-based podcast, and it's completely satirical. It's completely ridiculous. The fact that I'm having trouble explaining in one sentence, I realize goes against one of my pillars, but yeah, it's just unlike anything out there. It's impeccably produced.
Kind of dramatized, sound designed.
Yeah, fully improvised. They recently released an episode with Nick Offerman as a guest, and that was a huge coup, I suppose, for us. But had fantastic.
He's got a voice made for podcasts, by the way.
He does.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, it's just a brilliant show that is completely ridiculous, off the wall characters and improvisation, but you don't know why it works, but it does.
So, go and listen to it, and then you'll know why it works, because it's a weird and wonderful show. Kristen, what's your take? What do people need to bring to a pitch with you?
It's a great question, and it can take a lot of different forms. So if I was going to try to distill it in a few words, I would say that we're looking for something that strikes us as brave. And that can be, it honestly sounds a lot like what you're talking about. It can be a lot of different things. Before I worked at Stitcher, I worked at a comedy network called Starburns Audio, which is the industry that brings you Rick and Morty. And at the time, they had a podcast that you might know of if you're familiar with true crime called My Favorite Murder. It is one of the biggest podcasts in the world. And they now work with us over at Stitcher. And at the time, what they were doing was incredibly brave. They were blending true crime and mental health and fuck politeness and strong female energy in a way that hadn't been done before. And I think that podcasting is unique in the entertainment sphere because it rewards bravery, because there's less barrier to entry, because you can take more risks. And I think too often the entertainment industry tries to recreate lightning in a bottle. How can I make another My Favorite Murder? And the way you do that is by making a brave choice and doing something different that people didn't realize they needed until they heard it. And so looking for something like that, a strong perspective, an idea that that we feel has an audience waiting out in the universe. All they need to know is that the show exists, I think, is something that really captures us.
And on that, your love of weird shit, which is also, I think, part of the title.
I really like weird shit. Yeah.
Fun-loving and the insane is this round table. So can you talk on the insane?
Yeah, the insane. Sure. Expert in that. I love how playful the podcast industry is, and I think we're just getting to the point where technology is going to really support bizarre, weird, format-bending opportunities, and so that would be my sort of everybody in the audience thing to look out for. Netflix now has an interactive division. If you participated in Bandersnatch or noticed Man vs. Wild, they had a couple of projects that were interactive in the video space for the first time. Podcasting, I don't think, is going to be that different. In fact, I think we're remiss in not getting there faster or first. We've got technology that that can deliver a tour date announcement for a comedian that's traveling to exactly the right zip code where that tour is happening. We use it for practical or ad delivery or business reasons. And there are a couple of folks, Welcome to Night Vale occurs to me as an example. There are a couple of folks that are using this technology to deliver alternate endings to podcasts, but I think we can be doing so much more. I think that you can geo-lock content, so you have to be in a physical location, like The Great Adventure, the Amazing Race or whatever, in order to get a specific kind of content. I think that you can make projects interactive. I've seen escape room podcast pitches that are really cool. I've seen projects that send you to websites that plug into other mediums. Things like that, I think, are going to start to be the next frontier of really insane levels of engagement. Podcasting already has unprecedented levels of engagement for a medium, and I think that's the next step. I can't wait for it.
Yeah.
Cool. Are you guys all going to make them? Cool. Pitch them to me. I'll get them made for you.
I guess we should wrap up pretty soon. Like we should have left on that applause break, really. Or on,
keep it going, quick.
On big things. There we go. Yeah, this will do it. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Bye.